The sky over Tohoku was quiet and pale with the sound of gentle waves brushing against the coastline. Children were walking to school, office workers were settling into their desks, and fishermen were preparing their boats for another normal day at sea. Nothing suggested that history was only hours away from one of its most catastrophic turning points. At exactly 1446, without warning, the earth began to tremble. What started as a subtle vibration soon transformed into violent shaking. Buildings groaned, windows rattled, and the ground rolled like a living creature. The quake grew stronger with each second. People struggled to stay on their feet. Shelves collapsed, vehicles bounced on the streets, and power lines swayed dangerously. Inside classrooms and offices, alarms blared. Students hid under their desks. Workers tried to protect equipment, but quickly realized this was unlike anything they had experienced. This was no ordinary quake. The Pacific Plate thrust upward beneath the North American Plate, shifting parts of Japan by several meters. Coastlines sank, towns moved sideways. The entire nation shifted slightly on its axis. For 6 terrifying minutes, the ground refused to stop shaking. Roads cracked open, bridges twisted. Massive buildings rocked violently, though most remained standing thanks to Japanese engineering. When the shaking finally ceased, silence fell. People stepped outside in shock, unaware that this 9.0 magnitude earthquake was the strongest ever recorded in Japan. But the disaster had only begun. Beneath the ocean, the rupture had displaced billions of tons of water. A giant tsunami was now racing toward the coast at aircraft speed. Warnings blared. Tsunami incoming, seek higher ground. The earth had roared. The ocean was about to strike. As the shaking ended, many believed the danger had passed. But far offshore, the Pacific Ocean was rising into a monstrous force. The tectonic shift had displaced unimaginable amounts of water. A massive tsunami was now racing toward Japan at nearly 700 km/h. Japan's warning system screamed, "A massive tsunami is approaching. Evacuate immediately," people ran. Parents grabbed children, elderly citizens climbed evacuation hills, but in many areas time was too short. At 1518, the first wave struck. It was not just water, it was a black wall of debris, cars, boats, and shattered homes. The tsunami surged over seawalls, reaching heights of 15 to 40 meters. Entire towns vanished. Minamisan-riku was wiped out. Rikuzentakata was consumed. Ports disappeared. Houses floated like toys. Ships crashed through city streets. The water pushed several kilometers inland, swallowing everything in its path. Television cameras captured the horror live. The world watched as black waves engulfed neighborhoods. Broadcasters cried on air. Fires erupted as fuel tanks exploded. Additional waves followed, each bringing more destruction. More than 500 square kilometers were flooded. When the waves retreated, they dragged buildings, vehicles, and people back into the sea. And deep within the chaos, a new disaster was brewing at Fukushima Daiichi. The sea had struck, but the nightmare was not over. When the tsunami hit Fukushima Daiichi, seawalls collapsed. A massive wave flooded generators and cut all power. In a nuclear facility, losing power means losing control. Cooling systems shut down instantly. Without water circulation, fuel rods began heating dangerously. Engineers raced in dark hallways, relying on flashlights as they tried to manually release pressure. But the damage was too severe. By nightfall on March 11th, reactor cores were melting. Radiation levels were rising. Pressure inside reactors threatened to explode. Evacuations expanded from 3 km to 10 km, then 20 km. Families fled in snow, leaving homes and pets behind. On March 12th, Reactor 1 exploded, sending a plume of smoke skyward. Officials insisted it was only hydrogen, but fear spread rapidly. On March 14th, Reactor 3 exploded violently. Footage showed fire and debris blasting upward. On March 15th, Reactor 4 caught fire. Radiation spiked. The world held its breath. Inside the plant, the Fukushima 50 stayed behind, risking deadly exposure to pump seawater into the reactors. Their bravery prevented total catastrophe. Still, 3 reactors melted down. Over 100,000 people were displaced. Entire towns became ghost zones. Farms and businesses were abandoned. Fukushima left a deep scar, not just on Japan, but on the world's confidence in nuclear power. The earthquake shook Japan. The tsunami drowned it. Fukushima haunted it. In the weeks after the disaster, Japan faced unimaginable grief. The tsunami had erased entire communities. Mountains of debris covered the coastline, cars stacked on boats, homes shredded into splinters, metal twisted into unrecognizable shapes. Rescue teams searched relentlessly. Helicopters hovered overhead. Dogs barked into rubble. Survivors waited in cold evacuation centers, whispering prayers for missing loved ones. The toll was heartbreaking. Nearly 16,000 dead, thousands missing, 450,000 homeless, millions without water or electricity. Yet, amid sorrow, the world witnessed something extraordinary: the dignity of the Japanese people. There was no looting, no chaos. People lined up calmly for food and aid. Volunteers worked day and night. Teenagers helped elders. Communities shared everything. Night after night, towns lay in darkness. Snow fell through broken roofs. Cold winds cut through temporary shelters. But people endured. warming themselves around small heaters, comforting one another, refusing to give up. International rescue teams arrived from dozens of countries. Donations and supplies poured in. Japan, though wounded, was not alone. Even in their darkest days, the Japanese people showed resilience, discipline, and compassion. The storm had passed. Now came the struggle to rebuild. Tohoku rises again. Rebuilding seemed impossible at first. Towns had been erased, radiation zones remained empty. But Japan refused to bow to despair. In the first year, volunteers from across the nation flooded into Tohoku. They cleared debris, delivered supplies, and supported grieving families. Schools reopened in temporary buildings, life began to return. Within 5 years, reconstruction was visible everywhere. New seawalls rose, roads were restored, homes and businesses returned. Entire communities were redesigned with safety in mind. 10 years later, Tohoku stood not as a symbol of tragedy, but of resilience. New parks, schools, and memorials replaced ruins. Fishermen sailed again, families rebuilt their futures. Children who survived the disaster grew into adults driven by purpose. Engineers, scientists, doctors, and emergency workers inspired to protect others. The world learned a lesson from Japan. Even the greatest disaster cannot destroy a nation united in discipline, courage, and hope. The earth had shaken, the sea had risen, nuclear fear had spread, but the spirit of Japan remained unbroken. Tohoku suffered. Tohoku endured, and Tohoku rose again.